As the second half of the season rolls on, it takes us to the Granite State, where some of the top drivers in all of iRacing get set to hit New Hampshire Motor Speedway and see who can gain momentum for the second half of the 2020 Season 3 campaign. Who will win tonight's action? We're about to find out here on the Global SimRacing Channel. We welcome you to the virtual New Hampshire Motor Speedway in Loudon, New Hampshire. Round 6 of the Precision Racing League Cup Series season, sponsored by Ford Entertainment Group, PC. Some of the top drivers all set to go on the track tonight. And in the booth with me is Ryan Jones. I'm Justin Prince, and behind the scenes is our director, Sean Ambrose. He's using cameras provided by Ducky Beer. As drivers work their way around this racetrack, let's take a look at your GSRC lap guide for the best way around New Hampshire Motor Speedway.
New Hampshire Motor Speedway, sometimes referred to by the name of the town that hosts the track, Loudon. It's also usually referred to as a 1-mile oval, but the actual track length is just a few hundredths more than a mile. The facility as we know it today opened in 1990, and a lot goes on here. IndyCar and kart cars were an early fixture here at Loudon, and they were fast on this paperclip style oval. And while this still shows up on many IndyCar league schedules, the real-life IndyCar doesn't come around right now, but they always flirt with the idea. NASCAR, though, has given itself a huge presence here. The Cup Series has had some interesting races over the years. The Grand National Series also makes a yearly trip with the Cup Series. The trucks don't run here right now, but they have in the past. Both East and West ARCA Tours make the rounds, and NASCAR's Modified Series featured 3 races at New Hampshire. Even the Canadian NASCAR Series comes across the border to race at the Magic Mile. The track is known for being mostly flat, but since 2002 has featured progressive banking from 2 to 7 degrees. That's led to a little bit of multi-groove racing thanks to the paperclip style and as the track surface ages in the harsh New England winters. Long straightaways mean you have to get on the binders hard, but your lap times are really dependent on when you can get back on the throttle again on corner exit, while keeping that rear end planted. Will magic happen on the Magic Mile today? Stay tuned here on GSRC to find out at New Hampshire Motor Speedway.
That was a look at your GSRC lap guide for New Hampshire Motor Speedway. Now let's bring in my broadcast partner for tonight, Ryan Jones. Ryan, these drivers all set to go for 90 laps. Let's take a look at New Hampshire.
This track is really difficult. It's a short track, it's 1 mile long, but it doesn't really drive like a short track. You're heading down into the corners at some pretty big speeds, so you've really got to use up that brake pedal quite a bit, and it's tricky to pass here. It's an inside line track. You can take a couple different variations of that low line, but for the most part, it's hard to pass. You might have to use that bumper or wait for a mistake.
Indeed, especially with the 2 degrees to 7 degrees of banking here at this racetrack. Very little banking means a lot of off-throttle time for these competitors tonight. Now, first things first, before we get towards the point standings, let's talk about our sponsors for tonight. First, FEG PC, offering sim racing PCs for every budget. Whether you're just getting started or you're ready for that monster machine, anything in between, we've got your budget covered. More than 3,000 iRacers currently run FEG PCs, including some iRacing staff. Get yours today using the contact page over at fegpc.net. This series is also sponsored by Diecast Kings. Shop Diecast Kings, your home for the best selection of NHRA, NASCAR, diecast cars, and more at diecastkings.com. Once again, that's diecastkings.com. And you can also find them on Facebook at facebook.com/diecastking. The series also sponsored by Road Trip Transport. Whether a tractor or truck or anything in between, you can move it. Specializing in all kinds of flatbed freight, call Road Trip Transport at 251-525-7429. Lastly, the ButtKicker is a proud sponsor as well in this series. ButtKicker products include incredible immersion and bring realism to every game. Feel every nuance and truly put yourself in the driver's seat. To feel what you've been missing, go to thebuttkicker.com. Let's take a look at what you have may have been missing in the championship fight entering the second half of the campaign. And for those tuning in for the first time, it's been the Richard Regan Jr. Show. 4 victories in 5 events so far. Season with a 23-point advantage over his AthleteBooker.com eSports teammate, James O'Brien. Abner Acosta's third in the point standings. That is 24 points back, while Bradley Hawley also hard into the fight in P4. Joshua Daniels rounds out the top 5. 3 of the top 5 drivers, once again part of AthleteBooker.com eSports. And that's why with the team standings side of things, it's been Domination Station as well on that end. 84 points the advantage there with a combined 5 wins, 10 top 5s, and 14 top 10s with 3 poles. Quarterback Joey Rolls Racing have been rolling along with 84 points back from the top spot. SGE Esports comes into tonight third, Carl Ramrod in fourth. Riding Shotgun Rangers rounds out your top 5 in the team standings. Now, Ryan, let's take a look at your race details for tonight as these competitors are ready for round number 6.
Going to be 90 laps ahead of us, round 6 of 10. Fix it up for these drivers, so it's all on the driver to make the difference. No fast repairs, and at a track like New Hampshire, you might be wishing you had 1 or 2 up your sleeves, and an incident limit of 24. So they got a bit of a wiggle room for some beating and banging out there today.
Absolutely. Going to be curious how this all plays out, but are you interested in advertising with GSRC? Our channel's 1 million monthly global impressions are a great way to get your branding seen by a diverse audience. Follow the link in the description to the YouTube version of this broadcast to learn more about the Global SimRacing Channel. As these drivers continue on with practice, approaching 3 minutes to go in the session. It's a very hot track tonight, Ryan. Some of the hottest conditions these drivers have seen throughout the week. In official races, they've been in average about 100 to 110 degrees Fahrenheit track temp. We're over 120 tonight.
Yeah, it is scorching. Track is going to be slippery. Coming off the corners, we both called the NASCAR iRacing series over on Network a couple days ago, Justin, and we were seeing drivers struggling coming out of the corners, and that was a relatively cool track temp. And this is even double that, so you're going to have to be super, super careful applying that throttle coming out of turn 2, coming out of turn 4. Going to be very easy for the rear end to overstep, and you'll be around or in the fence very quickly.
Following along with Pat Harvey, he's currently 6th in practice. The fastest time set by Richard Regan Jr. of 30.489. James O'Brien, Bradley Hawley, Mike Knight, Joshua Daniels currently inside the top 5. One of the interesting things, though, for these drivers tonight, Ryan, is the distance, 90 laps. The fuel run, as we've seen for some drivers with those NIS events, can stretch more than 90 laps. Becomes the question, do you elect to go the whole run if it stays green, or do you bank on those caution flags? Or if you don't get those cautions, do you try and risk it by taking a pit stop in the middle of the run?
I think the nature of this track, you have to bank on a caution coming out at some point. So you're going to want to run your tyres knowing you're probably going to make a pit stop, because if there was a caution, let's say halfway, you're not going to stay out because the tyre drop-off is monumental, and the extra grip you get is massive, regardless of how hard it is to pass here. It becomes very easy on fresh versus old rower. So I think you're counting on a caution, you're going to run your car hard, maybe save a little bit. If you get a few early cautions, you expect a long run, but I think drivers are expecting to make some trips to pit road today.
And drivers have already experienced some difficulties in this practice. One driver mentioning a big split in the springs as well, Ryan. For example, left front, 3,500 pounds. The right front, 850. Some massive differences in those springs could cause a lot of instability for some of these cars tonight. Your thoughts, Ryan?
Yeah, for sure. It's a shame. You normally commentate this with Christian. You and Christian are both big racers. You know your way around your setups. You see me, Justin, I'm a through-and-through commentator and a terrible racer, even if I do enjoy it. So when it comes to those springs and what they're going to do to the car, I couldn't tell you what might happen as a result of the setup.
Let's just say it's going to be a very interesting one tonight. Based on your experience, though, how would you drive this racetrack?
I'd be really trying to throw it into the corner, try and dime into the corner almost, because, as I mentioned, you head in there with a lot of speed, don't you, Justin? So you let the car wash up just a little bit, and then turn the car down and get the car as straight as you can as you try to apply that throttle, and it should give you a pretty good run down the straight. We did see a couple of drivers trying that a few days ago.
And several have actually been trying it throughout this practice session. There are 30 seconds left in said session. And track position, as we've seen as well on Friday, mind you, Ryan, was extremely crucial. So was tire strategy. It could be very paramount tonight because remember, 90 laps and or 1 hour, which has come into play a couple times this season.
Yeah, lap times around 30 seconds. We shouldn't be getting towards that hour marker tonight, but you never know. I expect, given the quality of this field, we should stay green for plenty long enough to be able to be well within that 1 hour window, but it is there. Should we need it?
These drivers are all getting set to go, and here's a twist for tonight. There was a discussion involving some of the drivers and organizers, and that there was some sorting in terms of how the setup was to be formatted and how the drivers were handling said setup. They had to redistribute said setup for the actual session prior to the start of practice for this event, meaning rather than the normal 2 solo qualifying laps, Ryan, you only have 1 shot to try and set the pole tonight.
And that first lap generally is really tricky because your tires are still coming up to temp, and you generally use it as a bit of a banker lap before you really wind it up for your second attempt. So drivers now are going to be really pushing and really on edge on this single flying lap they get after their outlap. Like right now, this man right here, Brendan Adams, going to have to fire it down in there and hope it sticks. He's going to have to push this one through the corner. Taking a very wide line there, didn't he, through 1 and 2?
Yeah, this is one of the Adams family racing machines trying to set a fast qualifying time. Half the drivers jumping onto the track. Immediately at the start of the qualifying session, track temp has been going down -3 from the start of practice over the span of an hour. But for Brandon Adams, one of the first drivers to set a time across the stripe, a 30.782 is the benchmark. That was 3/10 quicker than his practice lap.
And about 3/10 slower than the benchmark in practice. So it's about midway range. And we'll see how it stacks up as Durbin goes second, 4/10 off him. Jose Medina going to start his lap as Adam Zenk goes up to the top of the sheets.
That's Zemke, yes indeed. Bisont Jr. now up to the top of the sheets as well, indeed. Very quick this session to say the very least, but several of these drivers carrying a lot of momentum. We've talked about Richard Regan Jr., but what about Bradley Hawley? He's one of the drivers waiting at the moment. He just so happened to win the truck race here amongst many of these competitors, including Stephen Durbin, who's now in P8.
Mark Kalin, the Mid-South driver, going to come through 3 and 4. And this looks like for Kalin, it is going, warm-up laps. So he's just beginning his attempt now. Joshua Daniels, where does he go? He goes up to second with that effort. It's about 300ths away from Wilson Jr. up on the top at the moment.
Dan Cervantes was also quick throughout practice. He's been carrying a lot of momentum this season, mind you. Prior to last week, was inside the top 5 in the point standings. Looking to get himself back in the conversation tonight after scoring 39 points in the last race, just behind Joshua Daniels. But this man, some of the men we've seen tonight, and this season have been hard to stop. Richard Regan Jr., he's won 3 straight, Ryan.
Yeah, and I wonder if anyone could stop him today. If he gets out front, it's going to be very difficult to get in front of him as Cervantes. Where does he go with that latest lap? Up to 8th place. I'm watching Richard Regan at the moment. He's running about a lane lower than we saw from our very first attempt of the day. And let's see what it does. Oh, he's just missed out. A 4.83 puts him second.
And the person on top of the pylon, this is astounding. David Wilson Jr., much of the season has been around the mid-pack in some of the races he started. This is the best track we've seen him carry pace at this entire season. 16th at the points entering tonight with a DNS on the season already. Durbin, by the way, 15th as he's finally set his time, while Josh Slade is 16th. One of the drivers looking to keep an eye on as well, though, James O'Brien. He was 4/1000 of a second off his teammate in practice, and in qualifying, he takes away the pole from David Wilson Jr. A 30.419 is now the benchmark with a minute left.
Stephen Durbin's already got a lap in, so he's just getting more under his belt while he can. On that point with Wilson, sometimes you see drivers excel on short tracks. circuits where they need to use more and more of the brake pedal, and it really comes more and more down to the driver. I know it's a fix-it-up series, but the point still stands.
Yep.
Some people are just really good at short track racing.
And can really adapt to how the short track setup will in turn run. But the interesting drivers who have not elected to qualify are Bradley Hawley, Yves Pellin making a start tonight in the 7, Chad Brown, Charles Sumner, Adam Schoen are the Munster drivers who have not elected to take a qualifying time here at New Hampshire. Your quick thoughts before we head towards the grid.
Bit of a safe bet, that one. 90 laps is a decent length, even if it is within an entire field window. They're banking on cautions. They expect to see some chaos and carnage up in front of them. They want to start at the back and stay out of it.
We'll see which drivers have elected to try and stay at the pointy end of the pylon tonight. As qualifying is wrapped up, let's take a look at your starting grid for round number 6. James O'Brien sets the pole time tonight, the 4th pole of the season for an AthleteBooker.com eSports driver, while David Wilson Jr. starts in P2. Richard Reagan Jr. starts in 3rd with Joshua Daniels rounding out the outside in row number 2. Pat Harvey starts in 5th. He's carried great speed throughout the season, with Esau Jr. having one of his best starts in 6th. Adam Zemke starts in 7th in the Brent machine, with Mike Knight starting in P8. Brandon Adams starts in 9th. He'll start alongside his fellow family member, Brett Adams, to round out your top 10, Ryan.
Danny Cervantes and Mark Kalin lining up on row 6 ahead of Paul D. Johnson and Jose Medina. Colton Lane and Stephen Durbin, 15th and 16th. Josh Slade and Bradley Holly, 17th and 18th. Holly, first of the drivers without a lap time, and then the rest set by provisionals. Charles Summer, Chad Brown, Adam Schoen, Abner Acosta, and Yves Pelland. 23 drivers going to take to the start of this 90-lapper around New Hampshire.
Of note, the 7 machine of Pelland not currently at the racetrack. Looking like he will miss the start for this one. But what are some of your keys to victory for tonight to try and take the checker flag at New Hampshire in a hot one?
The ever-present short track key: stay out of trouble, keep your car clean. The other one is going to be looking after those tires. You mentioned it's within a field window, so if we do go green, the possibility is there to stretch it all the way. Depending on how things run, we may see drivers opt to come to pit road and make it a one-stopper. But even if we get a caution, having those fresh tires is still going to be crucial, because if we get towards the end of the race, Justin, the fresher your rubber, the better your chances are. And if those guys out front have got their gap because, well, they use their stuff up, they're suddenly going to be in a world of trouble when they get brought back to you.
All the drivers off and away, 21 total, making 20 are all set to go for tonight's action. Abner Acosta also missing the start for this evening's race. All drivers all set to go at this just above 1 mile circuit. Variable banking at 2 to 7 degrees in the corners, 1 degree of banking down the straightaways, 1,500 feet long each straightaway. Here at New Hampshire, this asphalt and granite circuit. It's the largest sports and entertainment facility in New England, and all the drivers are all set to see who can start off the second half of the season with a victory. Green flag is out. We're underway from the Magic Mile. End of the first lap sees O'Brien lead lap 1 of the race. Reagan Jr. up to 2nd, Wilson Jr. 3rd. Daniels and Harvey all single file inside the top 5. The first side-by-side battle is about P7 on back.
You see how wide Wilson Jr. ended up through 3 and 4. That cost him the position. He did a very good job through 1 and 2 and had a great run down the back straight. Just drifted up into that really dark stuff on the outside of the racetrack, and that's what cost him. He's up there again. I think he's trying to search for some grip up on the high side.
You can't get a little bit of grip and also try and clear by some drivers, but the top 2 have ran away. Up the track goes Wilson Jr. way up towards the marbles. That's opened up the door for Daniels right underneath.
Yeah, he may be hunting, but he's not finding any grip right now, and might have to just sit in line and get his momentum and rhythm back before he starts looking again. Joshua Daniels is getting some clean air on his front nose, and a good exit as well. Here we go, gets the run onto the main straight, side by side from the lead as well.
Trouble as Robert Bisson Jr. is spun. Josh Slade also collected. Medina also in the incident. First yellow flag is out to start lap number 4.
That's down on that front straight. Very easy to have big accidents down there, you see. There's no room either side of the racetrack or any grass or anything. Easy to really stack up and have even a blocked track. See what happened here.
And it's so easy right there to just get loose like that. Here's the problem, though. With how tight the front stretch is, it's like a funnel, and there's no space for anyone else to go.
Exactly what I was talking about. He gets into that fence and bounces straight back out towards where everyone is coming along. And Josh Slade had nowhere to go on board from him. He's on the brakes, but so hard to predict where that car is going to come to a rest.
Colton Lane was also involved in the incident with significant damage to his race car. And we're quickly under yellow for the first time. Now put Slade down the pit lane. Bisson Jr. with a blown motor and suspension damage. His race may be done after that one. But that was at the wrong time. If you were Richard Regan Jr., he was ready to take that lead and quick.
He was moving fast, and you could see him on the onboard shot we were in. He was pulling to the inside up front on James O'Brien. Caution flew just before he made that move. Those guys at the back, remember we highlighted them, who started back there. We said probably trying to stay out of trouble. 2 of them never took the start, Abner Acosta and Yves Pelland. But Adam Schoen, Chad Brown, Charles Summer, and Bradley Holly. Well, the incident there was at the back, so they were very fortunate. Bradley Holly has made some good progress early, up into 13th already, up 5 spots. So too, Chad Brown.
You already see the amount of positions gained. He was one of the quickest drivers in practice, as well as in that prior session we were referring to a little bit, the hour prior to this one. So looking very comfortable at this racetrack. He put on a clinic, as was referring to Ryan in the truck series. He ran away by as much as 5+ seconds in that race. Of course,
yeah, we try to recreate that, but it's a completely different car, isn't it, Justin? Obviously, apart from the visuals, but the package, so much downforce that these Cup cars have, it's more than the trucks. And, well, even less power, I think, potentially, or not far from it. On the short tracks, though, these guys have got all 750 horsepower back underneath them, so plenty at their disposal. But the high downforce remains a different beast.
This is the low downforce, remember, with the smaller spoiler at the back end. That was instituted this year after reverting back from the high downforce from 2019. So whenever
the point still there.
You still, though, can't stick it like you could with the high downforce. There is differences, mind you, from 2018 to 2020, especially with the front nose, but there are similarities to how you drove it back in 2018 to how you drove it to how you drive it now.
It can be a bit of a issue for some drivers if they run, you know, a bunch of 1.5 miles and then they turn up to a short track. It can take you just a little bit to adapt to suddenly having all that horsepower under your right foot again and not as much downforce pushing your rear end into the ground.
So if you're not a short track specialist, let's say, how much preparation would you have put in for this type of race tonight to make sure you didn't be that person who snaps around a corner exit on the bumps in turn 4?
A lot, because there's 2 things I'm looking at. Obviously not making the mistakes, but track position. I didn't mention it before the show, I probably should have. Track position is your other key factor, especially here. It's not like Bristol, where sometimes you do see 2 lanes. This is a 1-lane racetrack. It's hard to pass. It's a wide single lane, but, you know, you've got to be up front, so you can't afford to make a mistake. You've got to be consistent as well. So you're putting in a lot of preparation to make yourself as consistent as possible, and even trying to practice running a high lane versus a low lane, pretending there's a car beneath or above you to get that practice in for the race.
Drivers all set to get back underway as O'Brien, the control car, Reagan Jr. second, then a pile of performance groups, David Wilson Jr. in P3. Green flags back out, and the two teammates get the count.
Oh, they're going to be side by side, down into one. Up top, trying to keep the car there. Trying to take that lead away after that great run he had before the caution. Still wheel to wheel.
Richard Regan Jr. powering it hard on the outside. Gets clear. New race leader, Richard Regan Jr. Now keep in mind, one thing to know. These two drivers on top of being teammates in the series are also teammates in their sim racing world. In terms of outside of league competition with Domino Earth's Legacy eSports, both of them had to count perfectly. That's why Joshua Daniels didn't get as good of a start in Row 2. However, Daniels already up to P3 in that group.
How good was Regan up top there through 3 and 4, surged by James O'Brien. That might be telling for a little bit later in the race. You see they're running the middle of the racetrack. If you go any lower, you have to turn the car way too much, and because it's very little banking, you just find yourself losing way too much ground as you try to wind that throttle on from a big steering lock range. If you go any higher, you're driving too far around the racetrack.
Up for the back end of O'Brien, by the way, starting to pull away from Daniels. All this is while Wilson Jr. struggling on entry. And one thing that is very difficult at New Hampshire is getting your brake points right. If you miss your braking marks, you are plowing up that racetrack. And in turn, if you overheat that right front, you're going to have that hard time to be able to cut, to be able to dive in the corner like you were talking about. Caution.
Out.
At the back of the field, it's Chad Brown, who is in 15th position. He gets spun around by Stephen Durbin for the second caution flag of the race.
Well, Durbin missed his brake point there, didn't he? Okay, looks to the inside and just drives into that left rear, and Brown ends up rear end into the fence. Big damage to the back of that car. Rear bumper goes missing, and he might actually be alright, because given this is a short track, speeds aren't as high, and you've seen in real life a couple times, missing back bumper is nothing to be worried about occasionally.
Now, still, though, you have to be also concerned of potential of engine damage, because there is the chance, say you hit that back end, hit it hard enough, Ryan, you can lose about 12 horsepower in terms of, or rather, standing RPMs out of the 2,000 range. But 77 laps to go. We'd like to remind you at this moment that live timing and scoring is available for this event. Go to GSRC.tv to keep up with your favorite drivers and teams throughout tonight's action. And with there being 2 short runs so far, none of the lead drivers, it seems, coming down to pit. All the way back to Durbin, Sumner, Medina, Lane, and Brown. Those are the only drivers who elect to come down and pit on the second yellow.
Yeah, I think we'd have to get to around lap 30 under green flag conditions here to see everyone come to pit road if a caution was to then come out here, Justin. Because it's, you know, as we said, track position's so important. If your tyres haven't been run that hard, you've only done a few green flag laps, there is no point coming to pit road and risking losing that position on the racetrack.
Here's a good example of that, Ryan. Of course, we called NIS on Friday. A lot of the same drivers took part in the Sunday NIS. It was a different flowing race which had several dozen caution flags, to be quite frank. However, one driver elected to pit from the lead with 50 laps to go under yellow. It took them until the second green-white checker to even get back to row 2 on a restart.
Conversely, if you do come in, you do get some green flag running, you can come back through. We saw that from Harrison Lyon. They actually drove from a lap down and got back up to the front at the very end of the race. So it all depends on what's happening in this very particular event.
Yeah.
You can never completely plan what you're going to do because every race is different and every field is either more or less aggressive than another.
Absolutely, and those are some of the gambles we may see with drivers staying out to throughout the night. By the way, first DNF is official. Robert Bisnott Jr. done for the night. He's parked the 3 machine after being in the pits with damage repair for more than 8 minutes. He's currently scored in 20th. Josh Slade also has been in the pit lane for that same amount so far and has come back and forth in this event. Up at the front, Richard Regan Jr., James O'Brien, Joshua Daniels, the teammates 1, 2, 3. Still, one of the best performances this season for a Pilot Performance Group cars in P4 and Wilson Jr., Knight P5, Pat Harvey in 6th. Brett Adams has gained 3 positions quietly in 7th. Zepke, Kalen, and Hawley up inside the top 10. You talked about him before, Ryan? He's now +8.
Done a very good job, hasn't he? Working his way forward quickly. That 1 hour window we were talking about, Justin, at the start, saying it shouldn't be an issue. We keep getting cautions at this rate, it will be. There's another thing for drivers to consider.
Hence why I brought it up. Because it has come into play in some racetracks, especially the short tracks in the past.
Yeah. I think I may have said at the start, I very much doubt we'll see it as an issue. I forgot what happened on Friday. That was a 100-lap race. That took 2 hours.
151.
That. Yeah, 151.
More than 2 hours.
It took more than 2 hours. You do the math, that still equates to a race that, in theory, for 90 laps, should go longer than an hour.
Also keep in mind the pace laps on average 4 to 5 each caution period. That's why the still drivers lining up. This has allowed Josh Slade to repair enough damage to get scored back in P20 and get back going. He is 10 laps down. Should note, he is the only driver a lap down. 10 caution flags, and he gets in the conversation. 1 to go for the restart either way.
Cautions at New Hampshire appear to be a lap longer than you would normally expect because it's a short track. But again, it feels like a long short track, which is why, you know, they feel like they should be ending a little bit quicker. If this was somewhere like Bristol, you'd be thinking, damn, 5 laps isn't enough. I need more time to get my car repaired.
Crazy thing is, the pace laps are 1 minute and 7 seconds on average. So, you add that up, about 5 minutes per caution flag period. Something to think about for strategizing the rest of the way. 73 to go this time. Regan Jr. in control of the field. Last time they waited until the start, just across the start of the restart box, where the flagman throws it up at the stand. Similar position this time, Richard Regan Jr. Hard jump, he's up and away. Daniels times it up perfectly from row 2.
Good jump indeed from Daniels, but through 1 and 2. O'Brien's not going to want to give this away. He'll have the momentum down the back straight. They're side by side behind him as well. That's Mike Knight getting up beside David Wilson in that battle for P4.
Still side by side for 2nd position. Still side by side for 4th position. See the several groupings of battles already up on your screen. The top 3 have ran away. O'Brien was able to clear up front. Up the racetrack in the backdrop, though. Brett Adams just mowed the outside fence. All while Wilson Jr. still stuck on the top side, battling with Knight.
Finally able to clear Knight. Just a corner after O'Brien clears Daniels. And already O'Brien charging up towards Richard Regan Jr. up at the front.
Wilson Jr. finally able to clear, and that's one of the difficult parts with passing here, especially in the long run, is we talked about it on Friday in the NIS broadcast, where you're able to defend a lot, it seems, on that top group. You still want to try and make the moves on the bottom line, but it can take several laps to set it up, and you need to be perfect to be able to get clear on.
And it uses up your tires every lap. You're having to put more steering and
trouble, Mark Kalen. Kalen spins around in turn 3. And for the 3rd time, we are under yellow. This time it's the Jim's Body Shop machine getting some help from Brett Adams, who had just previously damaged that right front fender in turns 1 and 2.
It looked like Adams was trying to really open up his arc for the corner, despite being on the inside. And he was hoping that Kalen was going to leave him a bit more room than they did, but Kalen went for the normal, outside line through there, and as a result, they came to contact. Kalen does keep it off the fence, though.
Great job of locking it up and making sure he didn't tap that wall with the back bumper. However, he does lose the track position back to 19th.
Yep.
Josh Slade, though, will be the lucky dog. He is 11 laps down. He'll go back to 10 laps down. This caution and a majority of the lead drivers not pitting Oh boy, it's a split call. Mike Knight from 5th on back pit.
Takes that left turn. How many follow? Quite a few. A couple going to stay out. But I would say, yeah, you're right. That's about half the field, isn't it? Half and half, almost exactly. A couple laps cars still on the racetrack. They don't really count for now. Was a bit to spice it up.
It absolutely is. Regan Jr., O'Brien, Daniels, Wilson Jr. have not pitted all of this race. Lane, Durbin, Sumner, Medina, Brown have hit for crash damage at some point in the race. Everyone else who just came down for fresh tires and fuel in their respective race cars. Mike Knight on back. There haven't been too many green flag laps. That's the thing here, Ryan. The downside is, it could be very tricky here on the restart, potentially 2-3 wide for some of the circumstances here, because there's still been 5, 6, 7 laps in green flag racing.
Good news for Regan Jr., O'Brien. They've got quite a few cars between themselves and the first car that was in the lane. Just get the official count on where that car will line up. Mike Knight, I believe it is. Justin, he'll line up 9th for this restart.
That's because Chad Brown elected to come down and repair more damage, but so far, Regan Jr., O'Brien, and Daniels, they've been the kings of the field. They've been the fastest cars on the racetrack, it seems, Ryan, by 1/10 of a second each lap.
And I reckon O'Brien has actually got the pace over Richard Regan. When he cleared him, the car behind, third place man, he was immediately 2/10 quicker than your race leader. So keep an eye on O'Brien. If we get a few more laps into a green flag run than we have so far, he could definitely drive up and pass Richard Regan and get the lead of the race back after he lost it early on.
Coming to 67 laps to go, by the way, at this point. And as a driver, what's your methods in terms of loosening up and making sure you stay in a positive mood while you're pacing behind, well, the pace car in these longer caution flags?
Don't know if I should say this. I'm on my phone during the cautions, Justin. Keeps your mind off the race. And as long as you have the phone somewhere in the vicinity where your peripherals can see the screen, you generally find you don't have many incidents doing it, because, I mean, you're doing 88 Ks, which is something in miles.
55.
Yeah, 55, which is, you know, highway speed almost, but it doesn't feel fast on iRacing because you're used to going really, really fast. So you're just cruising around, one hand on the wheel, one hand on the phone, keep your eye on both, and before you know it, you're getting ready to go back racing. At the end of a race, though, when you're lining up first couple rows, you got a couple laps to go before the checkered flag's going to fall, starting to think about that as opposed to anything else, trying to play through in my mind what I want to happen on the restart, which, as you'll know, Justin, generally doesn't happen.
Absolutely. Majority of the starts tonight have essentially been the 3 count. Get towards the start. Should I say the front straightaway? Launch on the count of 3 essentially as soon as the pace car is down behind the yellow cone. And off and away we've gone. But for Richard Regan Jr., he's the control car. O'Brien in second. Joshua Daniels on board is in P3. David Wilson Jr. starts us outside in row number 2. Colton Lane in 5th. Durbin, Sumner, Medina are the last of the drivers who stayed out this caution flag. Mike Knight on back pit. Knight is 9th. Harvey is 10th. With Adam Stepke and Bradley Hawley rounding out the top 12. Let's get back underway once again. We may see tire spin here. This has been a talking point. And some of these runs like this. Regan Jr. leaving O'Brien off in the dust again. Daniels with a good launch back underway.
And I'm keeping my eye on the fresh tyre cars further back in the field as your top 3 all go single file. Make that your top 5 through 1 and 2. That's what they need to do, is run single file, don't hold each other up, and don't give a free kick to those guys on the fresher tyre to just drive up the back of you. Mike Knight working his way on the low side, driving by Charles Sumner. and going to drive right on by the next car in line, which was Colton Lane.
See that in the backdrop. As several drivers shuffling around in the positions as well in that group. Holly, Sumner, Zemke also trying to shuffle in that grouping of race cars.
There they are.
Oh, wow. The top group is now single file, nearly 3 wide as Zemke got a bit loose behind Colton Lane.
Yeah, he was trying to follow Knight through, got loose, and went backwards 3 wide for a moment. And Bradley Holly looking pretty fast. Mike Knight is really driven away from everyone else. Looking backwards from Zemke now. Pat Harvey really gets it up and under his rear bumper heading into turn 1.
Already one of the SGE machines trying to hold on to the group as Danny Cervantes spins. He's off in the grass. Cautions out as several other cars follow. Adam Schoen involved. Jose Medina also in it.
So 2 incidents occurring at the same time there. It looks like. Yeah, 2 incidents at once. So Cervantes and Schoen going around. Might not have brought out the caution, but it was Medina up top. So Cervantes, green and white car there, gets loose and spins down. And behind him, Medina gets loose up top, which pushes Schoen down with Cervantes and Medina. He ricochets back up into the fence. That's what brings out the caution.
Let's go up top on this one. It was near identical spots, but different lanes. Here's the difference. A car was underneath. Just nowhere for the 83 to go. That was, by the way, Brandon Adams, who had that car go right across his nose.
Look on board with him. Car gets loose. He thinks he's going to go low. No, he doesn't. He missed him.
Just barely. That could have been
Great
disastrous.
reactions. Certainly could have been. Great reactions from him. Adam Schoen brings it to pit road. I imagine Cervantes is down there as well. He is. And Medina, well, I think he might have had to take a tow back to the pits.
See a bit of crumpled up fenders, though, especially the left front. He did smack the Armco as he slid along the grass. Lucky dog, this caution is Josh
He didn't hit
Wade.
it that hard.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, he didn't hit it that hard, so he might be able to get away with it. It really depends on whether he's knocked the engine or not. Because, yes, it's a short track, but as we've said a couple times today, you get down into the corners at some pretty high speed, so engine damage here does affect you more than some other short places like Martinsville or Bristol.
Now, keep in mind, some of these drivers throughout this race tonight, in some of the terms of the top speeds, have reached up to 160 plus miles an hour at the end of the straight lanes here tonight. Already 60 laps to go in this race. Reagan Jr., O'Brien, Daniels, Wilson Jr., Knight, Durbin, the top 5. Mike Knight, if this continues, might be in a decent shot especially if they get a long green flag run, because he was the quickest driver to get through the traffic. Here's the downside. Bradley Holly's the second quickest. He's in 7th, right behind him on the bottom line coming up here on the restart.
Yeah. As long as they don't fight each other, they should be able to work their way up to the top 2. That's where I think it gets difficult. He's got Wilson and Daniels to pass, but I reckon O'Brien and Regan Jr., they might have the outright pace to be able to actually fight Mark Knight on those fresh tyres, because their rubber isn't ridiculously old. It's still within the window.
Yeah, it's only been about 31 laps into the race this time by, for reference sake. Keep in mind, this series does follow the same lineup of tracks that is for the official side of racing on the iRacing service. The next track is also going to be a hot one. Daytime race at Phoenix. By the way, it starts at 1 p.m. in sim for official races, Ryan. Did double check that last week.
Is it set during summer in sim as well?
Yes, indeed.
That is going to be scorching in the Arizona desert. Bring your sunblock to that one.
You had to double check that one. And because several thought, oh, what if it's a nighttime race? Because that was the case, mind you, in the wintertime in official races. And it was seen here with the series in Season 1, believe. But here's the thing.
Yeah.
It could be a tricky one.
I think because it's summertime, you'd have to be running pretty late in real life to get a night race at Phoenix this time of year. So in the sim, I guess the same thing equates, even though, you know, it's not really, doesn't really make a difference, but keep the realism there and make them run around in the hot weather and see how many drivers will probably really chew through your tires as well running that super hot track. Another factor to consider today.
Track tip has declined, though, since the start of the race. When the green flag waved, it was 120 degrees. We've seen in qualifying and practice it was around 123. It's at its lowest point so far, 114 degrees in sim time, approaching 314 on July 18, 2020 in the sim.
46-degree real temp.
You mean Celsius?
Yeah, of course.
Either way, these drivers are going to get back to fighting some heated battles. The teammates still 1, 2, 3. Firework Performance Group car in P4. Then it is Knight with his best race this season in P5. Pace car is off. Another good jump for the inside. Green flag waves.
Knight got caught napping. He was a few car lengths off the back of the car in front. That's going to hurt him as Regan O'Brien are clear through 1 and 2. Daniels and Wilson as well. And Knight still fighting with Durbin after that lackluster launch.
See them in the backdrop as Regan Jr. already has pulled away by 4/10. Mike Knight, though, diving his way in the backdrop for P4 at the moment.
Now that he has the fresh tyres, he's able to make use of that low line. Only reason it's working, and only reason he's able to actually gain positions. Bradley Holly is that grey machine right behind him as well. Sorry, the black machine with a bit of blue highlights that's following him through. As they both get by David Wilson Jr. in a moment.
Walking on board with the North Star Title Company machine. And Wilson Jr. has struggled to stick that third line in terms of the dotted hash marks. That time able to get it clear. You see they're just about clear as Holly, in fact, is clear into 1.
I reckon that time Knight just moved it up the track half the car's width and forced Wilson to move up himself in reaction. He was getting a bit sick of running down there beneath him, wasn't able to clear. And now Holly has an opportunity to drive by Knight. He's going to drive to the low side of him. Now this won't be as easy because they're on the same level of freshness when it comes to tyres. Good drive in the middle of the corner though.
That was one of the strongest lines Holly had in the truck race on Wednesday. Sticking that second line of dotted marks to be able to run off and away whenever he had to go side by side. Does it again in the Cup car. Holly now, the first car on fresher tires in P4.
That's a superb line if he can make that work throughout the race. You see him even there, now that he's by himself, he's opting to run about half a lane to a lane lower than the majority of the rest of the field. Riding on board with him. Watch it here as he enters the corner high. Of course, when we go on board, he goes back to a normal line, but that is the line that uses your tyres least. See, you can't run that other line all the time, otherwise you'll really hurt towards the end.
By the way, Josh Slade at the very back of the field spun on his own on the exit of turn 4. No caution flag. He's now half a track behind the rest of the pack. Oh, wow. Holly is closing in. Gained a 1/10 of a second last time. This time by. He gains another 10. 30.1 for the leaders, 30 flat for Holly.
And Knight's going with him, not letting him get away too much.
And one thing to note, Ryan, these drivers not shifting either. We talked about it a little bit on Friday, where some drivers may have built their cars for shifting. The fix set, no one's dared even use the third gear, especially with the risk of burning up that right front. Right rear, rather.
And it's so easy for the rear end to kick around as well. As you shift down the gear, the RPMs rise and rear tires start to light up. And you can do it on entry, and you can end up heading into the outside fence with the rear end, or you can do it on exit, and you can end up heading into the inside fence with the front end. So It's a lose-lose situation if your car won't handle it. But
Yes.
if you can do it effectively, it is worth a lot of time.
Absolutely. You can see, though, Daniels able to follow on behind his teammates fairly well in this line. The problem is, he's about to see some pressure. See in the back mirror, that's Bradley Hawley now up to the lead group with a 30.1 last time by. Still trying that second line to get underneath Daniels, and does at 3 and 4.
Wow, that was easy for Holly. Those fresh tyres working very well now. And Daniels, I think, recognized that fresh rubber, just sidestepped and let him go. Not his fight right now. Probably see a similar story develop when Mike Knight gets to him in a lap or two's time as well. Now Holly's going to set on O'Brien up the racetrack. Richard Regan Jr. not far away from him either. Again, running that real low line. About to lay them two up the racetrack through 3 and 4.
Now within 3/10 this time of James O'Brien, the lead is more than 3/10 between P1 and P2 for reference sake. Probably the only driver we're seeing trying this line in this fixed setup with the Cup car at the moment. It's been gaining them now about a tenth of a second to half a tenth each corner exit on those fresher tires. Here's the thing that I'm thinking about, Ryan. Are you afraid of tire equalization at this point? Because remember, there were minimal green flag laps on the top two's tires.
It'll come for sure. And then from that point, they'll run quite a few laps, and eventually O'Brien and Richard Regan Jr.'s tires will hit a cliff. And again, Holly will find himself at an advantage, but for now, he's still finding himself with a big grip advantage, and that's enough to get to the inside as O'Brien slipped up on the exit. Rear end was wiggling, and Holly had the run down the back straight. Not able to clear.
Wiggle for Holly in the back end. Here's a look on board with O'Brien. Not giving up easily, though. Sent it hard on the brakes. Pushes up the track, though, as Holly sticks the bottom underneath.
He should have the momentum coming off the corner, but Holly is really straightening it up very quickly using that lower line. And that's giving him superb runs out of the corner as well as through it. It really looks like a win-win line, but it's the things you can't see, such as what it's doing to his tyres, that's going to be affecting him.
Overall, that lost them a couple tenths to Richard Regan Jr., but now, just past the halfway mark, 45 laps to go. Traffic is up the road, about 10 car lengths, though. It is Josh Slade just up the racetrack.
Shouldn't be too much of an issue. It's a plenty wide enough racetrack, isn't it? It becomes an issue when the laps cars are racing each other, as Pat Harvey there is able to get by Wilson Jr., so he's really falling into the clutches of even more of the guys that pitted for fresh tyres under that caution period. Another one going to come now.
And this may have just came into the perfect spot for some of the leaders. Yes, indeed. That was the driver we just talked about who had to let the leaders go. And for the second time this run, lost it this time, it does trigger the yellow.
Would have been eye-opening for the leaders behind him. There he is. Just loses the rear coming into the corner. And wow. That's pretty scary for those lead lap cars. Now, at this point, I would expect everyone to come to pit road, even those guys on the fresher rubber. Because now it swings and roundabouts. If O'Brien, Richard Regan Jr. pit, and everyone else that hasn't pitted so far, they come back out, they have much fresher rubber, and the advantage Holly has becomes a disadvantage. So I expect them all in.
I expect them all in at this point, too, as well. Especially since the Rory ran about 20 or so laps green flag on their tires.
There you go.
Everyone in as expected.
One car going to dive back out. That's Charles Sumner. He's on the lead lap. Wonder if he's going to try and stay out throughout this caution period and take the gamble on his strategy.
Remember, this series does give a bonus point for a lead lap. Going off into the pit lane, though, at the moment. The drivers who gained the most spots from that strategy call, by the way, we talked about Holly. Harvey also gained some significant time. Off and away they go. Reagan Jr. first, Holly second, O'Brien third. Mike Knight gets up to P4. Joshua Daniels cycles to P5 to the bottom. And 3 wide behind him, to the point where David Wilson Jr. had to take the road course on the exit of the pit lane.
A couple cars almost touching.
And a couple cars just crossed the commitment line because of that stack up we just talked about. I think Harvey had to cross the blue line before they got to it. And that might be trouble. Take a look at how tight it was. This was in the group for 5th and 6th on back of the pit race.
Yeah, there were a few cars very close to running over it. You see, at the front there, Knight almost ended up off into the racing surface. And then coming out, wow. Yeah, that's going to be a penalty for him. It was because, well, Wilson Jr. was rejoining from the road course, wasn't he? And I don't think he had any idea he was there.
Yeah, and that just gave Pat Harvey a black flag. Zemke has also got in one as well from that situation. So both of those drivers to the back of the line. Also a bigger penalty as well in that. James O'Brien for second, caught speeding in that sequence too. So 3 different drivers, end of longest line penalties, and 1 pit exit.
Disadvantages of a very narrow pit exit here at New Hampshire. Another short track feature. Narrow pit exits, those issues arise quite often.
Charles Sunder has come down as expected, taking the lead lap. The drivers are discussing that over with race control at the moment, by the way. So, to make sure they do not lose a lap in that sequence at this point. 40 laps to go this time by. Richard Regan Jr., Holly Knight, Daniels, and Wilson Jr. Now your top 5 at this point. Now joining us is the third man for tonight, Christian Chaloner, who raced here just this past Tuesday for the NASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series. Thank you very much for joining us once again for PRL coverage. How are you doing tonight?
Oh, I just had a couple of technical issues, which is partly to do with my late arrival here. But yeah, obviously, as we saw there on pit exit, the pit exit is extremely tight here, especially as you kind of get to the very end, right where the blue cone is. And there was actually something I was worried about in the Coca-Cola Series race, that we would have some issues like that. Unfortunately for the guys who crossed that line and got penalties for it, even if the admins do clear them, they will be given an EOL regardless.
Yeah.
So that's a big penalty for those guys.
What are some of the takeaways you've seen as this race has gone on tonight, as these drivers get the one to go?
Well, obviously we've seen it's very difficult to pass. It's kind of a standard deal at this racetrack, and obviously there we had a bit of a reset with everybody coming down for tires, so that's kind of going to bring the race back to a more sort of a standard approach. Obviously we don't have the split tire strategy anymore, and it's going to be difficult for those guys who are fast, who got those penalties, to work their way back through the field, just because it is so difficult to pass at this track.
All the drivers who got penalties with a caution flag, 17th, 18th, and 19th. This is where they'll now be. O'Brien for speeding, Zemke and Harvey for blend line violations, for crossing the white line before they got to the blue cone. To that situation with the road course, it's /Legends Oval, the racetrack. But Richard Regan Jr., he looks to try and run away on the oval part of the track from Bradley Holly. Pace car is off. Another good jump. Earliest from Regan Jr. on the night.
Really interested to see what Holly and Knight can do now that they're on equal tyres. Do they still have pace to run up here with these top 2 guys that have been so dominant today? Richard Regan Jr. and James O'Brien. Although O'Brien not at the front anymore, is he? As few drivers having a wiggle down to the inside, down the back straight.
Yeah, you see there, it's Knight trying to dive underneath for P3. Just trying to get some good rotation off, though. Daniel's able to floor it off the exit. Gets back single file. But the focus goes up towards the front. Holly played the tire gamble. Gained a lot of net positions as a result from P10-ish before the last caution before he pit. To get up to second. He has been quick all week here, Christian.
Yeah, and we've seen this actually in the past here. This is one of Holly's best racetracks. I think he's always been really, really strong here. But it's going to be very difficult for him to actually pull this pass off. Obviously, we saw there on the restart, Mike Knight tried to go to the bottom, and Joshua Daniels wasn't able to make that pass.
Here's a look on board. Holly takes the peek to the inside. Can't get to the quarter panel quite yet. Still tries to stick it off the corner. Bobbles a little bit.
Rear end twitched ever so slightly as he hit that brake pedal down into 1. Might have cost him half a tenth of a second, which was crucial in that move. Advantage that Holly's got, now that he's on the same tyres, is that he can still run that line a little bit lower, which has worked very well, and it should give him a bit of an advantage when he uses it.
Yeah, that definitely will. That will give him a little bit more, especially later in the run. It should be a little counter his tyres. It looks like he's got a good run off of 2 here.
Still bobbing a little bit more, though, off the corner. Regan Jr. was the quickest out of the 2 last time by. They've already pulled away by more than 9/10 of a second from Joshua Daniels and company in this fight.
Looks like Holly's car is rotating a lot better than Richard Regan's. His is starting to drift up the racetrack, whereas Holly is able to really pull the car up, turn it, and then accelerate much better than Regan. You see it right there. They start to close as soon as the power starts to be applied.
And remember, when there was the difference in tires a little bit, O'Brien nearly pushed up the racetrack, and that opened up the door for Holly. Will that be the case here? He takes away the bottom side. Side by side for the race lead as Holly clips a bit of a banking dip variant.
It's absolutely not over here. It's going to be still be very difficult for Holly to get the run off of 2. Obviously, the top side is the dominant line in terms of down the straightaway.
Regan Jr. squeezes down. Holly back and forth. Once again on the bottom side, off into turn 3. Harder break for Regan Jr. Holly rides the second line.
The big advantage that Holly looks like he's got is the rotation from the mid-quarter, which allows him to get onto the throttle earlier. Down low, he's not quite able to use it as much because he can't move it up a little bit to help that rotation because, well, Pizzicato is outside. And you see there that Regan Jr. is able to clear him once again. So Holly might have to set himself up to get a really good run. Move up high to the middle, turn down, get a good run, and get fully alongside by the braking zone for the next corner. Then he might be able to clear him.
31 laps to go this time by. Of note, James O'Brien back to P9 after his penalty we talked about a little bit. Harvey P14, Zemke P13. But Holly looking for P1. Still trying that same line. Regan Jr. nearly snapped it off the corner, Christian.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what Ryan was saying there. It's the fact that he's got a car to his outside every time Holly's underneath Regan Jr. And it's meaning he's having to wait longer to get back on the throttle, and obviously then his advantage is lost. Might actually be better for him to try and get to that right rear quarter panel of Richard Regan Jr. so that the situation's reversed. And obviously we see that Regan Jr. is having to really kind of diamond the corner right now, and I think if he had a car on his outside, it would really, really slow him up on exit.
Agree with you on that point as well. Single file amongst the top 4 grouping. By the way, you've seen the backdrop. Mark Kalin did scrape the wall, caused the check up of the battle for P6 between Wilson Jr. and Adams. They're back single file as they've checked out by more than 2+ seconds compared to where the leader is to this grouping.
Yeah, this is Brett Adams you're on board with. You can see he's got a bit of damage on his front right as well. Likely from contact with the fence somewhere off the exit of one of these corners.
He actually did it in the middle of the apex and 1-2, remember. When he pushed up the racetrack.
Yep. I'm going to agree with you, even though I don't remember it.
This is the type of racetrack, though, Christian, where it can get away a little bit with damage like that. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely more towards the short track kind of end of the spectrum, and obviously the straights are of considerable length, but you're definitely not having a massive amount of on-throttle time here, and you're not going to lose out too much, especially if your car's still handling good and still rotating through the corner. So that's really not going to be hurting him that much. Obviously, it's not ideal, It's more of a mental thing, I find, at short tracks, where it kind of just it makes you question as to if you're driving correctly and so on.
Christian, I think you'll agree. The issue on short tracks, especially this place, where the corners are so long and flat, is if you get damage that affects the handling of the car and the turning point rather than the engine, because it can induce a lot of understeer through the corners.
Yeah, absolutely. It's mainly a handling deal. If you have any damage, it's kind of, if it knocks the toe out or so on, and you kind of got a different wheel position, it's pretty difficult to adapt to that kind of thing in race. And obviously it will kind of take some out of the car, and it will make it a little bit more tricky for you, especially if you've done a lot of laps this week and you've got a lot of, you kind of get into a mindset of exactly where you need to turn the wheel to and so on. And obviously if that changes, then you kind of relearning the track as you go.
Great discussion here as the gap is 4/10 for the race lead, by the way. Most of the field has single file out. Let's take a look back towards, again, that grouping we just talked about a little bit. Kalen, it seems here, Ryan, he's been struggling right here. Very loose.
Yep.
And for the second straight time in 1 and 2, he nearly snaps it. But for the back racing machine, this time it cost him a spot.
Open the door for Wilson Jr. Going to open it for Kalen. It's ajar. Now it's being forced fully open, and Kalen trying to fill the gap between Wilson and Adams. But off the exit, he grabs the fence. He was struggling to get the power down. He kept committed. Used up a bit of the fence to keep it straight, but way too deep into 1 and 2 that time. Washing up, Adams will go by him. He's going to be careful because James O'Brien's back there as well. I'm a little bit surprised he hasn't moved forward as I would have expected after that EOL down on pit road.
So Kalen's all the way back to P7 after that as Adams slides up all the way out of the groove. Kalen fights back on the bottom side this time. Can he try and make it stick? We've seen him struggle on his braking marks. He's been very aggressive, it seems, Christian, on where he's been able to go. And now Adams all of a sudden is struggling like Kalen was.
Yeah, it seems like both of these drivers are kind of actually being overly nice on the corner entry. Every time there's a car on the outside, it seems to be running into those upper grooves where there really is no grip. We see right there, the 23, almost up into the wall right there. The standard practice really is to give the bottom car the second groove and the top car runs the third and really kind of aggressively tries to pinch you down. But obviously this has just allowed James O'Brien to just sneak past both of them.
O'Brien says bye-bye, as he's now in P6. Here's the thing, though. David Wilson Jr., he pulled 2 seconds on this train, as those two drivers all slid up the racetrack. Now they're back to the proper line.
It's so easy to overdrive the quarter at a place like New Hampshire, Martinsville, where you're getting in, you're using a lot of the brakes, but there's no banking, or, relatively speaking, very little banking in the corner. So if you do overcook it, there's no natural resistance pushing you back down the racetrack, aka gravity, when you wash up. So you just keep going up towards that fence, and you've got to put more and more braking input in until eventually you wash up really wide, lose a bunch of speed, and you cost yourself the spot.
Looking on board with Holly again. He's now reset for a fight once again. Under 20 laps to go this time by. Regan Jr. pushes up the track. Holly to the inside. Both of them bobble off the corner, side by side in the back of the Magic Mile.
This looks like Holly's best opportunity yet right here on the inside. He's going to have to really aggressively push Regan Jr. up into that third lane, and he's not really doing it. It's going to hurt him on exit. Regan Jr. is going to have a much better run off of 4.
Regan,
look at that
he
wiggle.
rolled that stop really well, didn't he, Justin?
He did wiggle a bit, though. Still was able to get the better run despite that, and now Holly's wiggling on Apex.
Regan's carrying a lot of momentum around that third lane. The key right now that's keeping him the lead of the race is he's keeping the mid-corner speed up. He's not overdriving it in, and he's not backing up the entry looking for the exit. He's being quick through the middle, which is exactly where the low line should be fast. So he's negating that right there.
Yeah, he's preventing Holly kind of pushing him up on the exit and making him lift, and obviously hurting his exit speed just by kind of having that position when he gets to that part of the corner. And obviously again we see Holly's had to drop back, and The thing is, the longer this goes on, the more the two are going to equalize out, and the harder it's going to be for Holly to pull off this pass.
So what would you guys change up? Brian first.
Well, we saw Holly had a look and then sat back and waited, and having another look now. Let's come back to it because he's got down to the inside. This might be the opportunity, and he is. Look at Regan. Regan drives it lower, and Holly had a bit of a slide.
And Holly, a bigger slide, loses the bottom groove. They equalize back out down the back straightaway.
We saw that Holly was closing and then backed off for a while and then had another attack. That's crucial because, well, he's using up his tires right now. If he goes at it lap after lap after lap, his tires are going to wear, they're going to overheat, and he's going to actually drop more than he could even gain. So keeping those tires in check, now I think he's started to overheat those tires, hasn't he, Christian?
Yeah, that's one thing I was going to say as well, that you do kind of only get so many goes at this. You can't sit on the guy's bumper for the remaining 20 laps of the race just trying to do the exact same thing and get past, because if it's not working, it's just going to hurt your own tires and you're going to start to fall back as well. And we actually do see that the 77 of Joshua Daniels has started to close down this pair too. But just coming back to the point as to maybe what I would try, I would definitely be trying to get to that right rear quarter of Richard Regan Jr. That would be the kind of the way to do the clean pass, to just make sure that you're on the outside and really hurt Regan Jr.'s exit, because we can see he's sliding around on the exit of the corner, so he's not got an immense amount of grip himself. But then there's always the other way, and the way that happened to me a couple of nights ago, where if you're on the bottom, 8 wheels is better than 4, and so you can always do that.
You may notice a couple drivers with problems. Slade's blown up, and Colton Lane had spun a couple laps ago down the back straightaway. That's why you see him struggling on the bottom of the racetrack now, a lap down. Out of the way of the leaders, though.
Hey.
Top 4 separate by 1.2 seconds, Ryan.
Should I bring attention to the fact that the timer is about to hit 100 an hour?
Just about, yeah. It's going to be close, let's put it that way, because keep in mind the in-sim time in terms of laps time doesn't account at times in factors for the grid time. In our words, if we go green, it's not a factor. If there's a caution, then it does become a major factor.
Well, we got about 13 to run. 4 minutes left on the clock. That doesn't include the grid or the formation, which is probably another 3 minutes.
Yes, it's 6:30 officially, give or take.
It's going to be very, very close then.
Remember the lap times in the 31.8s to 9s for the race leaders. David Wilson Jr. and James O'Brien, the quickest cars on the track. They've been about 1.8 seconds and 3.5 seconds respectively back. Daniel's still starting to reel in Holly, with Holly starting to fall off at the moment.
Holly looks like he's lost the big advantage that he had in terms of the mid-corner speed and rotating through 3 and 4 right there. Joshua Daniels definitely rotated through the turn much better than Holly did.
This is allowing Regan Jr. to run away and then some. 31.8 last time for Regan Jr. 32 flat for Holly. 31.9 for Daniels. Of note, one of the most active battles on the racetrack is 7th on back. That's the air end up with back straightaway. Mark Kalin, he's been trying to hold off Adam Zemke, Brett Adams, and Pat Harvey this entire time.
Down on the inside of Zemke. He's going to complete that move on Adams. That's going to open up now for Medina into the inside fence. This could bring out a caution, and it does with 10 to go.
And now the timer is a major factor. This may be tight. Harvey hits the left rear of Adams off the corner, and we're under yellow with under 10 to go.
So that was Harvey, not Medina. It's my bad. I was using the leaderboard to try and figure out who that was. Here's the replay. What happened, Christian?
Yeah, just taking a look at that. It looks like he was trying to get underneath him and just clipped the back left corner there and sent him around. Obviously, looks like he didn't have the space he was expecting right there on exit. You see the 23 was running kind of the normal line. Has a little bit of his own moment, and maybe Harvey didn't really see that until it was too late. But that's kind of something that we've seen a lot in the past here in New Hampshire, where you get two cars getting together off of turn 4. It does happen off of turn 2 as well, but we do see it off of turn 4 quite a bit more. and obviously then the car gets spun down to the inside, and the walls are very close, and that's going to hurt.
So we're going to run 5 minutes under this caution period. Question is, if time runs out, does it still push to a GWC and only have one attempt, or is that going to put us under a caution finish?
That's going to be... It's been, in some cases, a one-lap shootout. It's been, in our cases, green GWC, others, under caution finishes. Some of the drivers are confident that they'll at least get a couple laps because Mike Knight, David Wilson Jr., Adam Zemke, Paul Johnson, Brandon Adams, and Danny Cervantes, along with Medina and Harvey, all pit under the caution.
I'm not really
surprised. No, I wouldn't either. I'm really surprised that those guys would have pit like that. I can only assume that they're not actually looking at the race timer, because I'm not convinced that this is going to go back green. I mean, throughout the week we've seen that the caution periods at this track are really kind of brutally long, actually.
Yeah.
And some of them did take two, thinking of the track position. Wilson Jr. and Adam Showing rather. This is a head scratcher and a half here. We may get maybe 1 or 2 laps on the time.
An hour has crossed on my sim time. This doesn't include the grid and the formation. So I'm putting it at another 2.5 minutes now left on the clock. Normally it's time plus a lap, isn't it?
Give or take. And timing and scoring is now official. On some of our ends, keep in mind some of our broadcasters across GSRC and across the various networks use something called JRT, where Joel real timing just reached under 2 minutes estimated. Warning has now been given. So this race, maybe a one-lap shootout, and that's all, if any.
The lights are still on the pace car at this point, so they're at minimum at least 2 to green right now. So the timer is going to run out before we go back green. The question is whether we get the one. I don't believe that we're going to get 2 laps under any kind of circumstances here. I think we have a chance of it either goes green for 1 lap or it doesn't go green at all, and this is the end.
Our director's choosing the pace car to win the race. Reagan Jr., though, may get it officially, who has been the driver who's led the most laps. He's been one of the quickest drivers tonight, especially on the long run, it seems, Ryan.
The quickest, if not second quickest. Lights still on. Yeah, we're finishing this one under yellow, boys.
This could get confusing because here's the thing. It's 1 minute and 7 seconds on average the pace lap. They hit 1 minute and 7 seconds at the stripe. So this could get very intriguing again, similar to what we've seen a couple times, Christian, in this series with this type of scenario before it. I believe a couple of the short tracks that's come into play. Kentucky at one point has had a similar situation.
Yeah, and we've seen quite a variance in terms of what the sim makes the decision of doing. Obviously, we've seen all variations in the past. We've seen a full green-white checkered. We've seen a 1-lap shootout. I think at one point we actually even saw a sprint to the line from when the pace car pulled off to the flag stand. So it really could be kind of anything here.
Actually, the way it works in iRacing is it works off an average of laps completed so far. So a late caution, well, sometimes it doesn't do enough to affect the average, so iRacing still goes back green. This is an issue that's arisen in very short sprint races at a track like Le Mans, a 15-minute race. iRacing hasn't been able to work out the average time because they haven't completed enough laps. So the average means we're on the final lap technically. This could be a dash to the... Dash to the line?
I'm putting my money on a 1-lap shootout, but dash to the line is possible.
Drivers have already been informed if it is a dash, they'll go off the results at the stripe. If it's a 1-lap shootout, all no held barred. Let's put it that way. Pace car ready to peel off this time by. We're about to see how this one's going to finish. Richard Regan Jr. in control of the field. Off and away to the green flag and across the stripe as they're wrecking behind him.
We stay green. We're coming back to the checkers. Richard Regan's got it. Daniels is looking low on Holly for second.
Holly with a big wiggle there. Daniels is going to have a great opportunity on the bottom here in 3 and 4.
Regan Jr. checking out. And for the 5th time in 2020 Season 3 for AthleteBooker.com eSports, Richard Regan Jr. takes the checker flag. He wins at New Hampshire. Holly second, Daniels third, O'Brien and Kalen round out the top 5.
Well, that was a wild finish, wasn't it? In the end, we completed 88 laps of the 90 schedule.
Have to say, though, Regan Jr. had the car to beat, it seemed, all night tonight, Christian.
Yeah, I definitely think that, once again, Richard Regan Jr. proved himself to be the class of the field. I think that Bradley Holly for that last half of the race was probably the quicker car, but obviously not able to make his way around Richard Regan Jr. and then did obviously start to fall back a little bit towards the end of that run.
77 led laps for Richard Regan Jr. tonight. He gets the chance to burn it down at New Hampshire. We'll take a step aside. Post-race coverage coming up in just a few moments. You're watching the Global SimRacing Channel live from the virtual New Hampshire Motor Speedway in Loudon, New Hampshire. Welcome back, everyone, to New Hampshire Motor Speedway for tonight's coverage of the PRL Cup Series. And what was an eventful one, to say the very least. Tonight's race was sponsored by FEGPC, Diecast Kings, Road Trip Transport, as well as ButtKicker. One driver dominated the field this evening. It was Richard Regan Jr. leading 77 of 87 official laps tonight with 6 caution flags and 29 caution laps and 5 lead changes. Bradley Holly had several chances to be one of those different leaders tonight. He finishes in P2, however, after starting in P18. He did not qualify, remember. Joshua Daniels in P3, James O'Brien, Mark Kalen round out the top 5. For Kalen, his best finish in all of this season. Adam Zemke finished in 6th, Mike Knight in 7th. Durbin, Brett Adams, David Wilson Jr. round out your top 10 in this one, Ryan.
Just missing out on that top 10 was Charles Sumner. I think he got a point for leading a lap with that gamble mid-race where he set out for a lap under that caution period when everyone pitted. Brendan Adams home in 12th, as in Medina 13th, and Adam Schoen 21st to 14th after his issues today. Paul D. Johnson in 15th, had a Cervantes, Harvey, Lane, Brown, and Slade. All of them had issues at some point. Bissau Jr. was our final driver that took the green, and Yves Pell and Abner Acosta never got there.
Let's look at your rundown for tonight's action. Justin Prince alongside Ryan Jones, Kristen Chowder in the booth with Richard Regan Jr., your race victor tonight. Richard, how does it feel to win what is now your astoundingly dominant 5th victory of the season?
Yeah, it feels good, but I think I definitely got lucky on that one with James getting that penalty because he was flying.
Yeah, speeding penalty put him out of contention from P2 back to P4. What was what you noticed with O'Brien's pace compared to your pace up at the front of the field?
I don't know. I was off from him all week because we were practicing earlier this week, and I didn't have the long run that he did. I don't know what I've been missing this week, but I've been struggling all week with the long run, so I gotta dig down and figure out what's happening and try to get that long run back because that definitely hurt me tonight. I definitely got lucky with that caution.
Essentially, you mentioned some of the luck already with the caution flag. What else was going through your mind for that, especially with some of the craziness? And keep in mind, several drivers elected a pit during that caution flag before the one-lap shootout.
Yeah, I knew it was close on the timer, so we actually we took the one to go with literally 2 seconds left on the timer, so that's how close it was. So it was just a matter of getting that good restart and not putting myself in a bad spot for someone to get up there and move me or get a good run on me going into 3 or anything. So it was all judgmental on that restart and how I was able to restart the race.
Next race goes to Phoenix. Your thoughts on that one? Expect to be a very hot one.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Like I said, I got to work on my short track with this tire update since the last season. I don't know what I'm missing on it on the short tracks, but we're gonna figure it out. And hope to go get another one over there.
Who do you want to thank for being a part of your dominant 5th victory of the season and your 4th straight victory on the trot?
I got to thank my teammates, Joshua Daniels and James O'Brien. Also got to thank Boyd Hogan, you, Justin Prince. I got to thank everybody that, watches and supports me, everyone at GSRC, everyone at PRL. I got to thank athletebooker.com for coming on board with me this season. We're continuing the streak with them with the wins for the team. I got to thank Neonism. You need a paint, go to neonism.com. Go to facebook.com/neonism and tell them that PRL sent you. I got to thank Multiple Sclerosis Society, Susan G. Coleman, Abruzzi Racewear, ButtKicker, Oculus Glasses, and just everyone that supports me.
Congratulations on your dominant victory tonight. 77 of the laps were led by you this evening. Congrats.
Thank you. Also, a quick shout out to everyone at Bobby Dale Earnhardt Legacy eSports.
Absolutely. That's Richard Regan Jr. coming away with the victory tonight. 2nd place is standing by with Ryan Jones.
Bradley Holly coming home in 2nd today. You were close, just going up short.
Yeah, I just tried to do a different strategy tonight and kind of tried to save my right front and rear tires. And if it was a little easier to pass there, I may have gotten them. Yeah,
well, you mentioned it's hard to pass at this racetrack, and then you gave up that track position to pit early under that, was it 3rd caution of the day? Or something along those lines. And then we had a pretty decent run, and it looked like it was going to work out for you. At that point, you're running behind Richard Regan, you're running him down, caution comes out, and you get equalized. Did you feel if you'd been able to get by, you had the pace on the same tires?
Yeah, I definitely felt like I had the same pace. Maybe, if I could, manage my tires a little better than Regan did and, try to get a run on him, which, I felt like I did, but with how hard it is to pass, by the time I started getting ahead of him, my tires would start to overheat.
Looking back, what could you have done differently to maybe try and make that move stick?
Qualify? Qualifying probably would have helped a lot more, but today wasn't in the cards, and I'll take a 2nd place after tonight.
Yeah, well, nothing to sneeze at, especially starting from 18th place on the grid, as you mentioned, not taking the qualifying. Who helps you get it done?
I'd like to thank Waterback Racing. these guys always help, trying to figure out strategies and week in and week out.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Congratulations on coming up runner-up today.
Thank you very much.
That was Bradley Holly coming home in P2. P3 is standing by with Christian Challenger. It's Joshua Daniels.
Josh, that looked like a pretty good run to third tonight. Obviously started fourth, and then that lead battle that was happening in front of you at the end, it looked like you were actually kind of running it down. And maybe if there'd been, say, another 10 laps in the race, you might have had a chance to get past Bradley for a second.
If there's another 10 laps, man, I probably would have had to go. I'd have saved mine the whole run, and I'd saved it the whole first run too. Hopefully, it turned into that at the end.
Yeah, definitely looked like you kind of had a better time management than the guys ahead of you at that point. Obviously, we had that late race restart where I don't think any of us really knew until the green came out what was going to happen there. And obviously, it was a one-lap shootout. We saw some drivers come down and take tires. You stayed out. Do you think that was the right call?
Yeah, man. I was really surprised when guys decided to take that.
Yeah, definitely.
O'Brien, I think he got fourth, didn't he? Because when he got everybody in front of him pitted him.
Yeah, I'm not sure on James, but I definitely saw Adam Zemke was one of the drivers who took tires, and he was moving through the field at the end. So I think for the position that you were in, obviously it wouldn't have really helped you so much. You were already kind of at the front of the field, and still got to be happy with the third place, especially at a track like this that's kind of rough. You got any thoughts going into next week?
We were going to Phoenix next week.
I believe so. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, Phoenix is, probably one of my favorite tracks. We'll just have to see how it goes. I really struggled at the beginning of this week and just put in practice and kept at it until I finally, get a feel for the car. And I was glad I was able to come in here and get third. It's such a hard track.
Yeah, definitely. There's one of the more trickier short tracks, and with this car obviously being such a flat track and so drive-off dependent. But congratulations on the third place, and good luck for Phoenix next week. And thank you for coming and talking to us tonight.
Yeah, man, thank you. And I'd also like to thank Athlete Booker, Levi Designs, PRL, and Diecast Kings, ButtKicker, and the GSRC, and my teammates Reagan and O'Brien. You guys are awesome. I'll see you guys next week.
Once again, that was Joshua Daniels. I'd like to thank him along with our second place finisher in Bradley Holly and first place finisher Richard Regan Jr. for taking the time to speak with us. Now, first things first, to go towards you, Christian, on this one. What are your thoughts on how this race played out tonight here in New Hampshire?
Well, I think for the most part it was actually really clean, and it was good that we saw that great battle for the lead there, pretty much being an entire race between Richard Regan Jr. and Bradley Holly, and that's really been the kind of the story of this season so far. It's kind of always sort of been a fight between those two, or Abner Acosta. It was a shame to see him not race tonight. Obviously did join the session, but never actually got out on track, and that's going to hurt him in terms of points. I think when we go to Phoenix next week, going to be a similar kind of race, obviously the same package and similar style of track in terms of flat corners and similar challenges in terms of drive off, especially off of the old turn 4, which in real life is now the new turn 2.
Your counter on that for what to expect next race, Ryan?
Well, one short track to another, completely different. I mean, Phoenix, I say short track, it's not classed as one, but I reckon it drives as much of a short track feel as this place does. So, going to be interesting. One book tonight, might be one to keep by your side for next time out.
Indeed, get your bubble wrap out. Make sure to cover those cars nice and tight with it, because there may be some bumping and banging throughout the race. But we'd like to thank you for tuning in to tonight's exciting and crazy action here for New Hampshire. I'd also like to thank Charles Sumner and the rest of the Precision Racing League for organizing this strong series. I'd also like to take the time to thank the round sponsor for tonight, Ford Entertainment Group PC, as well as Diecast Kings, Road Trip Transport, as well as ButtKicker. Are you interested in advertising with GSRC? Our channel's 1 million monthly global impressions are a great way to get your brand seen by a diverse audience. Follow the link in the description to the YouTube version of this broadcast for more about the Global SimRacing Channel. take the time to thank the companies who provide the software and hardware for our broadcast listed now up on your screen. Special thanks to Judith Warren, who provides her wonderful music. See the screen for how to get a hold of more for Great World. We would also like to thank the team today and Ryan, Christian, along with Sean. If you'd like to find out more about GSRC, including upcoming races, you can find it at globalsimracingchannel.com. If you'd like to help support the channel, you can check out our merchandise for sale at gsrc.storemvy1.com. Or you can check out our social media on Twitter at GSR Channel, Facebook at Global SimRacing Channel, and Instagram at GSRC_Graham. Don't forget to head over to our YouTube page and hit that big red subscribe button so you don't miss a moment here on the Global SimRacing Channel. On July 26th, it's daytime racing in the desert. Phoenix will be host to Round 7 of 2020 Season 3. Coverage starts at approximately 8:50 p.m. Eastern, green flag scheduled for 9 p.m. We also have upcoming races for other series listed up on your screen, so be sure to check those out and mark them down in your calendar. But until next time, race clean, race hard, and we'll see you on the track.